Hey guys, Booligan here with Booligan Shooting Sports. In a previous video, I kind of showed you guys my game plan for this rifle build, and now I'm able to show you the completed rifle build. This is my KE Arms KP-15 polymer lower based Dissipator rifle build. Kind of went over this in the last one, but a Dissipator rifle, kind of in the old days of Vietnam and immediately post-Vietnam, was taking an M16 length barrel, so normally a 20-inch barrel, with a 12-inch gas system, and then chopping it off to about 16 inches. This gave you sort of a handier rifle, but it did require a fair bit of tuning with the gas system, with buffers, with springs, to get functioning properly. The workaround for that kind of in modern times was to have a faux dissipator. So still with that front rifle length sight put out there, but with a carbine or mid-length gas system. One of the benefits of going with the full rifle length gas system is you generally have a much softer shooting rifle. The recoil impulse is a lot softer with that rifle length gas system. And that's kind of what I wanted to replicate here with this Delton Dissipator barrel. But from the last video, I kind of got this thing all put together, and really the showcase on this is the handguard. I really wanted a polymer handguard. I didn't want to go rail, I didn't want to go free float or anything like that. I wanted to go polymer and keep it relatively simple, but I didn't want to go with like an A2 design or an A1, really, for that matter. I wanted something a little bit more modern. Now, Magpul does offer a rifle length standard MOE handguard, and I don't like it. I think it's clunky, it's thick, it's fatter than it needs to be. I really like the MOE SL line of handguards. The problem being they don't make a rifle length MOE SL handguard. So I did. I took two carbine length ones, chopped them at the appropriate length, and then fused them together. Now you can still see the seam, kind of where they line up. You can still see it. It's not perfect, but it's definitely good enough for me. I mean, this is going to be kind of a, not necessarily a working rifle, because I don't do work that necessitates a rifle, but it is going to be a shooter. So it cares more that it's functional than that it's pretty. How I join these together is, well, first off, cutting them to the appropriate length, and then making sure I had as flush as possible as cuts and as square as possible of cuts. And even then, it did get skewed a little bit in the process, and I was chasing it, trying to square it out. And the problem is you can only take so much material away before stuff won't line up anymore. So I kind of got it as good as I could. Then tacked them in place with some CA glue, just simple super glue. That lets you kind of tack them in place where they need to be, get the alignment locked in, and then just kind of hold them together. Once they're glued in place, I then heated up two steel rods, so two steel pins that I had for each, for the top and for the bottom. Heated them up till they were just glowing red hot, and then using pliers pressed them into the polymer material. That gave me now a mechanical bridge between the two pieces. With those in place, I only pushed them in about halfway, a little more than halfway. I then used epoxy over them just to sort of solidify and keep them in place. I used some high temperature epoxy. On the inside, I then plastic welded by using a soldering iron, just like you would stipple a handgun frame, and just sort of pushing that material over to fuse the actual material on the inside. That gave me really good adhesion in there. But as an insurance policy, I also did then coat basically the whole inside of that with more high temperature epoxy, just to really solidify. As you could tell, I didn't want these popping off. On the outside, this side lined up pretty well. On this side, there was a little bit of a gap, just because, as I said, I was trying to get it really square, was not able to successfully get it completely square. So I used some of that same high temperature epoxy on the outside just to fill in that gap and sort of build up layers until I had a relatively smooth surface, sanding it, shaving it with a razor blade, sanding it, shaving it with a razor blade, and then hit the whole thing with some matte black paint to sort of hide that seam a little bit more. And that is the quick and dirty version to make your own Magpul MOE SL handguard. I don't know that I necessarily recommend it. It is labor intensive. It's very easy to screw up. And if you screw up, you're out at least one $30 handguard, probably two. So you're building these guys at $60 in material a pop and probably screwing it up. I posted this on Reddit and had a ton of people asking like, hey, will you make me one? And no, God no, just because like I'm not even 100% satisfied with my work on it. And it took me about 3 man hours, like 3 actual hours of my time doing it. And most people don't want to pay my man hour rate. These would very quickly turn into about $300 handguards. The best thing we can do is to join me in bullying Magpul to actually making MOE SL rifle length handguards. So that's kind of that portion of the build. The lower I'd already gone over in my previous video, but I really like it. It's a one piece. The thing seems really rigid. It seems to be quite solid. Everything fits together really well. It's using their trigger system, their DMR drop-in trigger. I really like the pull and the reset on that. The upper is an AT3 upper, slick-sided, just because that looks perfect. The other side, just it's sort of modern, not necessarily futuristic, but it does look modern actually, and just looks really, really good. For the sighting solution, I was really specific in what I wanted. And this is it. This is exactly the setup that I wanted. I love Seymour red dot sights. They're one of my favorite red dot sights. This is 80s, 90s technology, and they just work really well. But I still wanted to have an integrated sight. Now, Seymour used to make this specific setup. It was a modified carry handle design with like an A2 rear sight. And then it had a special setup for a Seymour sight to drop into it. This has long since been discontinued, and they've become a little bit of unobtainium unless you're willing to spend like hundreds of dollars for the setup. Luckily, I have a good friend who was able to find me a reproduction mount. I had my concerns, is the reproduction mount going to be solid enough? Is it going to work? This reproduction mount, frankly, seems better quality, better fit and finish, tighter assembly than most like surplus carry handle sights that I've seen. So I have zero concerns about this mount. In the mount, I fitted an actual Seymour red dot sight that I had kind of sitting around. And how this is set up, so the Seymour sights are kind of hilarious. There's no shake awake here. There's no, fancy reticles. It's literally a dial. You can either get a dial or a click. Those are your two switch options. But it's just a rheostat dial that you use to set your brightness. And with this setup, it is lower third co-witness. So if I'm keeping the dot centered in the lens, the dot is above the sights, but you can bring it in for more precision shooting and still use the iron sights, for shooting at long distances. And it's set up now to co-witness in the lower third of the optic. I really like the setup. The whole idea was to make something that looks a little bit retro, a little bit modern, maybe even a touch futuristic. And that's, realistically, I think that's where I landed with this. This looks like something that would be, like an alternate history battle, or not battle rifle, because it's only 5.56, but like an issue rifle, in the near future. Hell, the Tomorrow War probably should have used something like this instead of the ridiculous SBRs that they used. Overall specs of it, the Delton barrel is a heavy profile barrel, so it's kind of fat. But this rifle weighs just a touch over 7 pounds. It's like 7.1 pounds as pictured. So it is still relatively lightweight. Obviously you are front heavy because almost all of the weight is in that big fat thick barrel. I might be talking to my buddy over at barrelthreading.com, seeing if he wants to turn that barrel down on a lathe to just a more, not necessarily a pencil profile, but just a better profile than that H-bar profile. And then the next step is going to be just to get this out to the range and tune it. As I said before, this is a rifle length gas system. Delton does do 0.098 gas ports, so they're a little bit bigger gas ports, pretty decent size, kind of chunky boy gas ports. But I don't know how well this setup is going to run. You don't have a ton of dwell time between the gas port and the muzzle, and dwell time is really what's necessary for, one of the things that's necessary for good reliable firing. So I may need to tweak the gas port, but before that, I could tweak the easy stuff by adjusting buffer weights, by adjusting buffer springs, and things like that in the rear to give me, that reliability, that reliable feeding and that soft shooting that I really want to achieve with this rifle. So that's going to be the next step with this. Is it's going to be, we've got it assembled, we've done the fabrication work as far as the handguard. Then now it's just going to be taking it out to the range and trying to get it to run as reliably as possible with, a wide range of ammo. I've heard sometimes that these Delton barrels really are just not steel. They're not, for steel case ammo. You're not going to be able to use super inexpensive stuff, but I'd like it to be able to. I always have that ethos of, if it can't feed steel, it doesn't deserve brass. So that's kind of going to be the goal with this build, is just to make it as running reliable as possible with as much ammo as possible. So yeah, that's my update on this build. We need a good name for it. It's a KP-15 Dissipator, and I think we can do better than that. So post your best name idea in the comments. Many thanks to my subscribers on my website, booliganshootingsports.com. We have released a couple of really cool designs for them, including this guy, my RoboCop inspired FNS 40 frame. With the public release of the FNS 40 frames, I was able to then release my remixes. So we got that released to them this month, and I've got some other cool stuff in the works too. But many thanks to them. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do cool stuff like this on the channel and do kind of research and development on how to make rifle length MOE handguards. But yeah, many thanks to them. Many thanks to all you guys for watching and for following and subscribing. And of course, thanks for watching.